Hello and welcome to Firstpost Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Utsav Parekh and we'll begin with the headlines. Gaza authorities say that Israeli strikes killed 5 Palestinian journalists outside a hospital. The Israeli military says it targeted a terrorist cell. Syria's new security forces launch an operation against pro-Bashar al-Assad militias in the country's west. This comes a day after 14 of its troops were killed in clashes. The Ukrainian Air Force hits a Russian military-industrial facility in the Rostov region. The facility was used to produce solid fuel for ballistic missiles used in attacks on Kyiv. Japan Airlines announces that its systems have been restored after a cyber attack caused delays to some of its domestic and international flights. And India, Sri Lanka, Indonesia and other Asian countries hold ceremonies to mark 20 years of the Boxing Day tsunami that killed more than 220,000 people in the year 2004. We begin with Mozambique, where the situation is growing more volatile with each passing day. Cities across Mozambique remain on edge amid the ongoing protests over the disputed election results. In the latest, over 1,500 prisoners escaped from a high-security prison on Christmas Day. The prison is located in the capital city, Maputo. The police say that among those attempting to escape, 33 detainees were killed and 15 were wounded in clashes with the prison staff. They added that a search operation backed by the country's army is underway. It has led to the recapture of about 150 fugitives.
A group of subversive demonstrators approached the vicinity of the prison, making noise with their protests, demanding to release the prisoners serving their sentences there. They took them out of the cells, or out of that prison, about 1534 inmates. The protesters took them out and left with them.
The police say that around 30 prisoners who escaped were linked to terror groups. The terror groups are behind attacks and unrest in the northern province of Cabo Delgado. The attacks have been ongoing for the past 7 years. The police also said that since prisoners have escaped, crime is expected to increase in the capital, Maputo.
What we expect after the escape of 1534 inmates who committed major crimes in the country is that in the next 40 or 48 hours, there will be a dizzying increase in crime in Maputo. Increase of all types of crimes because they are specialists in all types of crimes. There will be an increase in robberies, assaults, rape of women, car theft, armed robberies, even kidnappings.
The mass prison break came as fresh protests and violence in Mozambique entered their 3rd day. The new demonstrations started on Monday after the country's Constitutional Council gave a verdict on the recent elections. The top court upheld the victory of the ruling Frelimo party's candidate, Daniel Chapo, in the disputed October 9th elections. The confirmed results by the court put Daniel Chapo at the winning spot with 65% of the votes. Initial results by Mozambique's election commission said Chapo won with around 71%. The number has come down to 65%, but the Frelimo party still won comfortably. Monday's court ruling extends the Frelimo party's 49-year rule in Mozambique. The main opposition candidate, Venancio Mondlane, received a revised total of 24.2% of the vote. The initial results said he had secured 20%. Mondlane has refused to accept the results. Instead, he claims to be the real winner of the October elections. Since Monday's court ruling, several protesters, mostly those who support Mondlane, took to the streets across Mozambique. They oppose the Frelimo party's victory and its extended rule in the country. Several banks, petrol pumps and public buildings have been ransacked and looted since Monday. Vehicles, including ambulances, have been set ablaze in anger over the controversial ruling from Mozambique's top court. The government says that at least 21 people, including 2 police officers, have been killed during this week's clashes. This has taken the death toll of the post-election violence to over 150. Opposition leader Mondlane has vowed to install himself as the president on January 15th. He has continued to call for demonstrations against the elections and against the court's decision. He says that the court legalized a fraud. The Frelimo party, on the other hand, has continued to deny any wrongdoing in the election. Mozambique has been on edge ever since protests erupted in late October. Several cities, ports, and even borders with neighboring countries have been affected by the demonstrations and the ensuing violence. The protests have also led to the disruption of some major business operations in the country. The International Monetary Fund has downgraded Mozambique's economic growth forecast, and this comes while the country is grappling with the devastating effects of Cyclone Chido. And the mayhem continues in Mozambique after the mass prison break on Christmas Day. How is the government going to tackle the worsening situation and the growing uncertainty in the country? To discuss this, we have with us Fernando Lima. He's a journalist and he's joining us live from Mozambique's capital, Maputo. Welcome to First Post. So, what can you tell us about the current situation on the ground? How's the mood among the people of Maputo and other parts of Mozambique?
Well, good afternoon. Well, the situation is very complicated. There's a lot of chaos. There's a lot of tension around the country, not only in Maputo. In fact, in neighborhoods in Maputo and Matolo, which is a neighboring city, citizens are forming their own militias in order to protect their houses and their assets in the neighborhoods. This is a kind of a new initiative from ordinary people trying to prevent that looters invade their resident areas in order to attack their own houses and their own possessions. On the other side, it seems that Mr. Venancio Mondlane, the opposition leader, have been quite horrified by the images is getting out of the chaos in mainly Maputo. He have said a couple hours ago that he don't want to take over a country in shambles, and so people should stop, and I'm quoting him, to vandalize assets, premises, public institutions, private property, and calm should return back, meaning looting should stop. These are the late developments in the country, but I'm not sure if these developments and the statement of Mr. Mondlane will stop the violence at this point, despite the situation had slightly improved today when you compare it in relation to Tuesday and Wednesday.
So this latest round of violence, it started after the Constitutional Council's verdict, the verdict that upheld the Frelimo party and Daniel Chapo's victory. And so what do you think about the verdict? What do you think about the victory and the claims made by Mondlane?
Well, the Constitutional Council have 2 options: either to declare null the elections and order the repetition of the elections, so people would go to vote for a second time, or to go for this kind of more reformist option, which is they turn around 24 seats from Frelimo and gave those seats to the opposition. I think it's not enough, because the level of fraud that different observer missions have seen and identified during the election election day in early October were quite evident that 24 seats changing hands will not be enough to appease the opposition and to
So,
stop the potential violence. I would say that the violence have started late in October and have not stopped until now. So the recipe was in the air
so
after the Constitutional Council have declared those results, and that's what happened. And it's not the government is not showing any initiative to enter negotiations with Mr. Venancio Mondlane.
So now you say that 24 seats is not enough. By that, by the sounds of that, it means uncertainty and instability will continue. But what do you think lies ahead in the future for Mozambique?
Well, I think it's important the president-elect to, in a very urgent manner, to enter dialogue with Mr. Venancio Mondlane, set up a political agreement in order what comes next, meaning in terms of election results, plus a transitional government or an inclusive government and a political platform. What should be the program of this government that should be open to different political sensibilities in the country? I think this could be a recipe to overcome the current violence. But it needs to be seen if the government and Frelimo candidate are willing to enter dialogue and negotiations with Mr. Venancio Mondlane at this point.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lima. Thank you for joining us today. We appreciate your insights.
Thank you.
Now we shift focus to Sudan, a country in the grip of a brutal civil war. We have been telling you about how the conflict is not an internal crisis anymore. The United Nations says it is foreign players with vested interests who are prolonging this war. They've been accused of fueling the conflict by backing the warring sides. But one nation now wants to step in as mediator, Turkey. Turkey wants to play peacemaker in Sudan. It is offering mediation, but not between the two warring parties. One of the warring sides is the Sudanese army, led by Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. On the other side, you have the Rapid Support Forces paramilitary group, or RSF. This is led by Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, also known as Hemedti. Turkey is not offering to mediate between the Sudanese army and the RSF. Instead, it wants to mediate between the army and the United Arab Emirates. Sudan's army accused the UAE of supporting the RSF, both politically and militarily. It's a charge that Abu Dhabi denies. A few days ago, the Turkish president, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, had a phone call with Sudan's army chief al-Burhan. Erdogan said that Turkey is ready to sort out the differences between Sudan and the UAE. He emphasized his commitment to promoting peace and stability in Sudan and also protecting it from foreign interference. Erdogan also drew attention to the recent Ankara process. Those talks were successful in mediating an agreement between rivals Ethiopia and Somalia. After months of effort, Ankara brokered a deal between the two neighboring Horn of Africa nations. Turkey helped resolve a dispute over Ethiopia's agreement to seek maritime access, which it signed with Somalia's breakaway region, Somaliland. This deal is seen as a major diplomatic win for Ankara. It comes as Turkey seeks to elevate its global standing and demonstrate an ability to address complex geopolitical challenges. Earlier, Turkey also helped facilitate grain imports from Ukraine to global markets. This was amid the Russia-Ukraine war. And now, Turkey wants to leverage its balanced ties with both Sudan and the UAE. Sudan's army chief has received Erdogan's offer positively. He said he welcomes any role Turkey could play in ending the war. He also called for greater Turkish investment in Sudan. Turkey has been boosting its trade with Africa in recent years. In 2022, trade between Turkey and Africa crossed $40 billion. Last year, it was at over $37 billion. African projects undertaken by Turkish contracting companies reached over $85 billion in value at the end of 2023. Turkey is gaining ground in sectors such as infrastructure development, natural resources extraction, military equipment supply, and security agreements. Reports say that Turkey has sold its Bayraktar TB2 drones to at least 10 African nations. Turkey's involvement in Sudan also reflects its strategic interests in Africa, especially in the Red Sea region. This is a critical trade and maritime route. Strengthening partnerships with African nations seems central to Erdogan's foreign policy objectives. We know that Africa has turned into a major geopolitical battleground for world powers like the US, Russia, and China. But it seems that Turkey has also been quietly carving out its own space. Our next story is from Nigeria. Continuous power outages in the West African nation have made lives difficult for millions. With an energy grid on the brink and diesel generators becoming the top source of power, Nigerians are now turning to solar energy for hope. But economic challenges and affordability remain major hurdles. Our next story tracks Africa's fourth largest economy's chase for affordable power.
In Nigeria's largest city, Lagos, Shakira Fatomid returns home after her daytime banking job. Inside this modest house, Shakira has another full-time job, the one of being a mother and a homemaker. The soft glow of this phone's torchlight cuts through the dense darkness of Shakira's kitchen. Shadows move on the wall as she lights the stove to heat some water. After dinner, she takes this torchlight to supervise her daughter's homework. The roar of silence that comes with repeated blackouts no longer startles Shakira. Instead, they find her prepared. At work, Shakira charges her phone to full capacity in anticipation of a blackout at home.
When there is blackouts, I get to use my phone light, so I make sure my phone is fully charging in the office. I charge it very well in the office so that I can be able to use it in case there is blackout.
Shakira's struggle to find light at home reflects the reality of millions. In Africa's fourth largest economy, Nigeria's national energy grid teeters on the brink of collapse. Aging infrastructure, vandalism, and inadequate fuel supplies have crippled the system. The consequences are stark. Entire neighborhoods across Nigeria get cloaked in darkness during blackouts. In 2024 alone, the country has suffered 11 grid shutdowns so far. The situation has forced Nigerian households and businesses to rely on polluting diesel generators. With that, Nigerians end up spending a big chunk of their incomes on fuel. In the face of this crisis, solar energy is standing up as a flicker of hope. Supported by a $750 million World Bank initiative, Nigeria's Rural Electrification Agency aims to expand solar energy access across the nation. But few Nigerians can afford the solar energy options due to the country's economic crisis.
Even though globally, price of renewable, especially solar panel, was dropping as per the dollar price, but the naira was depreciating faster than the drop. So the naira kind of cancels out any reduction that you see in the dollar this in price. And then, you know, our economy generally hasn't been doing so well. So it means that people's income was not growing. So the depreciation was rising faster than even people's income and all that. So what it means is that a lot of Nigerians' disposable income shrinked.
In April 2024, when President Bola Tinubu cut off electricity subsidies for better-off consumers, it was seen as the boost needed to speed up the solar adoption. But the results have been far from satisfactory in the face of overall poor health of the Nigerian economy. At the same time, not enough has been done to repair the existing power infrastructure. Nigeria has infrastructure to generate about 13,000 megawatts of power, but its creaking grid can distribute barely a third of it. About 80% of Nigeria's power comes from off-grid diesel and petrol generators, reflecting the devastating scale of the ongoing energy crisis. Experts say that sustainable consumer financing options such as low-interest loans may hold the key to Nigeria's transition to solar energy. But the question remains if banks could consider such a move.
If you look at where the minimum wage is, so you ask yourself, how many months will the person save before he or she is able to afford to get a solar system? They may need to save their minimum wage for 1 year, and that also may still not be good enough. So the right thing would have been, so you have a consumer financing that with a good interest rate and that is spread over time, so that they can acquire this thing and start saving money.
As Nigeria faces the worst cost of living crisis in a generation, the path to transition towards sustainable energy options feels distant. Between the noise of generators and the flicker of Shakira's torchlight, the resilience of the Nigerian people has replaced the hope for government action. The question remains, how much more will the Nigerians have to endure before they see the light?
And finally, to our special segment, Resurgent Africa. Amid all the coups and crises, there are a lot of positive stories from Africa that often get overlooked, but not on this show. Our next story is from Cameroon. Deep in the lush hills of northwestern Cameroon, a centuries-old tradition brings a modern twist to monarchy. In the historic city of Fumban, the Bamoun Kingdom's young monarch faces an extraordinary challenge: a public trial by his own people. This isn't your typical courtroom drama. It's a lively ritual filled with culture, critiques, and celebrations, all aimed at strengthening the bond between the ruler and the ruled. Here is our report.
In the heart of Fumban, Cameroon, the Bamoun Kingdom's 20th king, Mohammed Nabil Mbombo Njoya, recently swapped royal robes for something less comfortable: the hot seat. With spears planted ceremoniously in the ground and an eager audience looking on, this centuries-old tradition puts the king on trial. Not in a grim courtroom, but in a spirited celebration of culture, dialogue, and community. As members of a masked secret society entered the court in honey-hued robes, the 31-year-old monarch stood tall on a replica of the kingdom's original throne. Currently held in a German museum, this marked his first unguent, an ancient ritual where chiefs read grievances and the king's governance is scrutinized by his people. From property management woes to playful jabs about courtly matters, the trial mixed serious critique with good-natured humor, ending in jubilant approval for the young ruler.
I feel a strong and triple emotion today. First, the celebration of the Onguan Festival for the first time since my accession to the throne. Then, celebrating the 548th edition immediately after UNESCO recognized the Onguan as an intangible cultural heritage of humanity, the first intangible cultural heritage of Cameroon to have had this consecration.
The unguent ritual, dating back to 1384, promotes harmony and mutual respect between the monarch and his people. After a 6-year hiatus due to the pandemic, the return of these royal rites drew tourists, locals, and even UNESCO's attention, which recently recognized unguent as an intangible cultural heritage. Festivities included rifle salutes, traditional performances, and the undeniable joy of reconnecting with a culture rich in history and meaning. For first-time visitors like British tourist Rolly Allen, the trial was a revelation. She says, and I quote, "I loved the role reversal. The people really get to judge their king, and it's not just for show."
I traveled specifically from Yaoundé to Fumban to attend. I wanted to relive this tradition, which is very important for the Bamoun people because it gives us an idea of how our grandparents used to live. This is the typical tradition of our ancestors. Things have not changed.
For locals like Amadou Njoya, The ceremony was a proud reminder of their heritage. It's moments like these that let us learn and pass on our traditions to future generations. One thorn in the kingdom's side remains the original royal throne, a colorful pearl-inlaid masterpiece now housed in Berlin's Humboldt Forum Museum. Taken during Germany's colonial rule, the throne symbolizes the deep cultural ties between the Bamoon people and their heritage. While the young monarch visited the throne last year, sitting on the heirloom of his great-grandfather, efforts to reclaim it continue. The inauguration of the Museum of the Bamoon Kings earlier this year marks a step forward in preserving and showcasing the kingdom's history. Designed in the shape of its striking coat of arms, a two-headed snake and a furry spider, the museum is home to countless treasures, though the throne remains conspicuously absent. As the rifles echoed and laughter filled the air, the Ungwa ritual proved its enduring significance. More than a public trial, it's a testament to the Bamoon Kingdom's resilience. Its vibrant traditions and the love its people have for their culture and their king. With UNESCO's recognition sparking global interest and renewed efforts to recover the throne, the Bamoon people are keeping their rich heritage alive, while looking toward a future where their traditions remain a source of unity and pride.
That's it on the show. We'll see you again at the same time tomorrow. Thanks for watching.